I would rather have a HELOC than not have a HELOC. I would rather have the ability to tap into money versus not. And it will allow you to decide to dial in your health, invest in your business. Like if you're not healthy, you're not wealthy. And it's as cliche as that sounds, it's cliche for a reason. I'm a big fan of life insurance when it's set up and used properly, especially if it's max funded, because it just gives you the ability to store your money where it's better. It'll get a better rate of return than like a savings account or a checking account. Hey guys, it's Caleb Williams with BetterWealth.com. It is interesting to me.
First off, debt is a function of your assets.
Hey guys, welcome to the BetterWealth Show. This is the very first version of the Naked Numbers edition of Q&A, and we have had an amazing response since just last week, since we just announced to the world that, hey, we want to do Naked Numbers Show, and we want you to ask your questions. We've had over 15 people submit that they want to be on the show, which we're super thrilled by. We're combing through those applications and we're responding to them. We've had multiple people reach out with initial questions, and we're going to continue to grow the show. And it is our hope that each and every week you're going to hear from me. You're going to hear from someone on our team. We're going to answer your questions and really be more engaged with the current nature of your questions and what's going on in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Joel. You are not just the producer. You're not only just covering all of BetterWealth content. You have to put up with people like myself. You got to put up with people like Dom. So you are an angel walking, dude. But I'm excited. I'm excited for this format, and I would just love to hear your thoughts. Like, did you have any expectations, and what are your thoughts as people are asking questions, as we're going to start bringing people on and like coaching them for free? I will say this. All these questions, anytime we do Naked Numbers, this is not financial advice. I'm just I'm less entertaining than Dave Ramsey, apparently. So don't take anything that we say as advice to your personal situation. Even if you ask the question, I am not able to give you financial advice over a show because there's a lot of nuances in that. So I want to lay the groundwork there before we jump in, because I think it is we are going to be rolling up our sleeves, and this is going to be way more personal than a lot of our other content. So Joel, welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the number one thing that I'm excited about all of this is that we're going to be able to directly speak into people's lives more than we already have been doing with our videos, because these are real people and these are real situations. And the hope is that all of our viewers are going to be able to maybe apply their own situations to these questions and get some answers.
Yeah, it's going to be good. What I'm excited about is the conversations. And so here's what I want to say. If you're watching this, if you're a fan of BetterWealth, if you're listening to this on the podcast, BetterWealth.com/naked numbers. BetterWealth.com/naked numbers. You can apply to be on the show. You can refer to someone to be on the show. Or if you have questions, or if you know people that have questions, go to BetterWealth.com/naked numbers and ask your question. The show only is possible because of people giving us questions, and we're going to have a dialogue, and it's going to be less scripted, and it's kind of how I roll. So very excited about it.
All right, then let's transition to the questions. And this first one is, what framework do you recommend for determining which source of capital, either cash, policy loans, HELOC, bank financing, etc., to use when making a purchase, investment, or gift?
I love this question. And I think, again, one of the reasons why we want you to be asking questions, and one thing that we're going to be doing is asking if you want to come on the show. So if you ask this question and you want to come on the show and talk about it, we want as many people having conversations with us as possible. So if I were to be speaking directly to you, number one, my framework is very simple. The first thing is, what are you purchasing and why are you purchasing it? So for instance, you talked about an investment, you talked about a gift, you talked about an activity. So I kind of put it in an activity bucket and say, what are the results of this activity? And what are the pros and cons? Because I think it's fair to say, like, every decision you make has pros and cons. So the first and foremost, I would get clear on what you're purchasing and should you purchase that. Okay. So if that's check number one, then check number two is, what is the most efficient way to make that purchase? And it's actually extremely simple when you break those into what should you purchase and then how do you purchase it versus combining it into one lump answer. And so after we get clear about the best way to purchase that, I'm looking at two things. I'm looking at cost of money. So if we're going to purchase that, or if we're going to invest and I'm in, then I'm going to look at my funding portfolio. And that's just a word I made up by like the access that I had, like where can I pull money? And I'm just looking at two things, the cost and the terms. So I'm looking at if I have money sitting in a savings account earning right at the time of this recording could be 5%. So there's money there, and there's opportunity cost if I take that money out. I might have money sitting in a policy, and the loan interest might be 4 or 5%. I potentially have access to a bank, which right now banks and credit unions, like at the time of this recording, could potentially be higher than a policy loan. But I'm looking for two reasons. I'm looking at what the cost of capital, and I could easily just say I'm going to take the cheapest money. I'm going to take the cheapest money. That could even include money in a bank account. But the second thing that you need to look at is you need to look at the liquidity or the lack of control that you could be giving up if you take that money. So for example, if you have money in a bank account or in a policy, and let's just suppose that you could get a policy loan for 5%. Okay, 5%. And let's also say that a bank could give you a loan for 7%. If all we cared about is the interest rate, Joel, we would take the 5% money. Take the 5% money, and it's simple. What I would say is I would be tempted, if I'm looking at interest rate and term, to take the bank's money at 7% and keep my money liquid and control, because I value control more than that 2% delta. I don't know if that makes sense, but in summary, and this is where it'd be fun to have people come on and ask their question. If you're interested, go to betterwealth.com/naked numbers, comment below. This is just the beginning of many, I think, amazing conversations, but it's number one, should you purchase this thing? And sometimes you need an independent coach to challenge you and be like, there's a lot of things that you could do with your time and money. Should you make this purchase? Should you invest? If the answer is yes, then we take a step back and say, how and what is the most efficient way to do that? And I look at opportunity cost. I look at cost of capital, and I also look at the terms, and I start putting a value on control. I put a value on liquidity, and for me, that value is super high. So I will actually pay more interest to retain capital and peace of mind versus the exact opposite. So that's the framework. That's how I would talk through with somebody, and my hope is that if you are the one asking this question, if you want to come on and dialogue even more, you're totally welcome to.
Something to give a little bit more context to this also is he's a 35-year-old accountant. He's based in Alaska, which is super exciting. That looks such a beautiful state. He added into his question that he's really been diving into the infinite banking concept, and he's always really valued the leverage of HELOCs. And utilizing cash value policy loans, all that kind of stuff. So ever since he's come across the infinite banking concept, he said his paradigm of how he pays for things is completely shifting. And he's feeling like he's unsure of how to make financial decisions because there's so many options almost now for how he can pay for stuff. And so he really wants to go into the risk, terms, qualification requirements, opportunity cost, and liquidity, to name a few, when he's making those kinds of decisions. And so can you speak into the world of HELOC maybe versus infinite banking, and maybe in your own personal experience, how you determine which to choose for that decision? I know you kind of just went over that, but dive in.
Yeah, HELOC is a home equity line of credit. And so what that means is if you own a home, you can get either a second lien or first lien HELOC. And what that essentially means is, just to make math simple, if you have a $100,000 home, which probably nobody watching this is like, well, 100,000, that's super cheap. But just to keep math simple, you have a $100,000 loan, and let's say you have, hypothetically, the loan is paid off, but you can take out a HELOC. And let's say that HELOC's $50,000, just hypothetically. So now you have a home equity line of credit that you could borrow against your home, and then you could use to do whatever you want. You could buy an investment, you could go on vacation. It's the same concept as infinite banking, because infinite banking, you're funding a life insurance policy, and the life insurance policy is the asset that you're borrowing against versus the HELOC you're borrowing against your home. So there's pros and cons to each strategy, and I'm a fan of, if you have a home, I'm a fan of looking to see if you have a HELOC opportunity, because it's like, I would rather have a HELOC than not have a HELOC. I would rather have the ability to tap into money versus not. Same thing with when it comes to the fact that we can borrow against our life insurance policy. I'm not somebody that says you should do it for everything. I do not think that's good advice. I think the opportunity you have to access money while you're living in a life insurance policy, and it not like hurting your future benefit of life insurance in the future, is like pretty amazing. And I would simply look at, if you already decide what you want to purchase, one of the biggest things to consider is, should you be making that investment? And that's I believe I know the gentleman that reached out to us, and he probably has a ton of opportunities. And so part of the issue is, what do you decide to do with your money? But once you decide on what to do with your money, then it's just the most efficient way to go about that. And if you're comparing to via HELOC or infinite banking, I would just look at the cheapest money, because especially, I would say both of those from a standpoint, if you have a HELOC, the hope is that you're not over leveraging and that the bank could call it back. I would just look at what the cheapest money is. And I would also have at least a year's worth of reserves set aside, because there's a lot of unknowns, and you want to make sure that you can weather the storm depending on if the investment goes south or other things.
Right. This is my own brain going now with this. As far as like a risk assessment, do you think that borrowing against the whole life insurance policy for say an investment would be a safer route to go than a HELOC?
It's safer for this one reason, is if you do a HELOC, who are you ultimately have to work with? The bank or the financial institution. And so could they make your life more difficult? Could they pull the loan? Could they, if the market drops and now your home was worth 100,000 and now it's worth 70, could that affect the loan? Absolutely. Would that happen with life insurance? No. So from that standpoint, there's privacy, but here's my pushback on that. If you took money from a HELOC and kept money in a life insurance policy, and that did happen, what could you do? You could take money from against that life insurance policy and pay off the HELOC. So I think another question that could be asked is, how much money should you be, putting out in these alternative investments? And I'm a big fan of building an emergency fund and a solid foundation. And I think so many people should be investing in themselves and saving money, and they're investing in other things way too soon, and they're not maximizing their ability, and they're creating their foundation has a bunch of cracks because they're, instead of a year, they're 3 months away from something being bad. And I just think that I think from a peace of mind standpoint, there's a really powerful thing about having a proper emergency fund. And almost everybody that I highly admire and respect, they have money set aside that is for that same reason, and allows them to show up more powerfully. So for the person asking this question, I would really challenge them to get that emergency fund at a place where they feel really, really good. And then when it comes to what they do with their money after, I would almost look at the cheapest way to access that money if they've already decided that they're going to purchase, knowing that emergency fund could bail them out if there's something that happens that the investments go south. Like, your emergency fund has to grow as you extend and do other things, because it has to be able to keep you afloat as you continue to grow your life.
Right. Well, this next question is pretty long, and it's a bit in depth. Okay. So pay close attention here. This is from a 30-year-old female, and she says, "Hi, Caleb and team. I have a money situation for you. That's why we're here. We are planning on buying a different home next year for around $240,000. And after profits of our current home plus land sale, we will be on track to have around $190,000 cash to work with. Do you suggest we put it all towards the house hey Dave Ramsey, given interest is 7%, or put 20% down and put the rest towards an Airbnb vacation rental. Nearly paying off the house would allow me to work part-time, plus pursue my business and focus on my health. We would be managing the Airbnb ourselves, but it would be great to have a place to occasionally use while also making money. One more thing, and hopefully not TMI, is she'll be contributing towards a retirement, maybe around 10%, so not super aggressive. However, when she retires, she'll be inheriting a multi-million-dollar estate and trust. That's awesome. My husband wants to pay off the next house ASAP while I'm on the fence about it. She's on the fence about it because she said her parents paid off their house too early, and they regret it because of the money that they could have made with those funds and other opportunities. And so she's asking, I want to be a good steward of what I've been given. And I feel like there's not a terrible choice between those two. So she's really just trying to figure out which of those two good choices.
Amazing. And it is you're choosing between two good choices. And I think the world of this question. And if you're ever open and want to talk about this question on the show, it would be fun. Like, Joel, think about how cool this would be if, as people start asking these questions and they come on the show and we have dialogues. How cool would that be? It's going to be. I literally get goosebumps because I know like the ripple effect that this is going to have. Here's
go to the description.
Go to the description. Go to BetterWealth.com/makeitnumbers. Go apply, ask your question, and we're just excited. And I want to thank everyone that was the first to ask the question and apply to be on the show. It's really, really cool. So here's what I would say. There's a lot of moving pieces here. One thing that I want to go back to is they said something about if they paid off the home, it would allow her to start her own business. Do you want to reread that or?
Okay, so she said, given interest is 7%, put 20% down, and put the rest towards an Airbnb vacation rental. Nearly paying off the house would allow me to work part-time, plus pursue my business, LLC, and focus on my health.
Okay. So here's what I'll say is focusing on your business and your health. You're not going to see me tell you to not that goes before a lot of financial decisions. So what I would challenge you is why is paying off the home the only scenario to allowing you to start your business and focus on your health? And I'm gonna play out a crazy scenario, but hear me out. What if you took 20% of the home that you're gonna buy, which is $240,000? What if you did 20% of that, which back of the napkin is like $48,000? And what if you put that 20% down, and instead of going and buying an Airbnb, what if you put that in a side account, like a high yield savings account, and what if that just paid the payments on a $240,000 home, which is not expensive at all. I could whip that up. Actually, right now I'm just going to do that. So we're going to get the handy dandy calculator out. And I'm just going to do a $200,000 loan. So I'm just going to assume, Joel, that there's $10,000 of closing cost over 360 months at 7% interest rate, which I think we could do better. That's a monthly payment of $1,330. Okay. So I'm just hypothetically saying this. Instead of going and getting an Airbnb, you could put 20% down on the home, put the other money in a high yield savings account for now. Just hear me out. From that savings account, pay $1,330 monthly payments. Obviously, with insurance and all these things, it's going to be a little bit more, but you have lots of months covered, and it will allow you to decide to dial in your health, invest in your business, and it will allow you to do both. What I'm not a big fan of is doing an Airbnb at the cost of your health and doing what you really want. Not at all. Like and by the way, wouldn't be a fan of that regardless of what you said of like, hey, we could do this cool opportunity, this oil and gas thing, not investment advice, this, this super crypto thing. And it's like, but if we do that, I'm not able to invest, like dial in my health and my business. Like if there's something there, and if like you're working full time and don't want to be, like I don't think paying off the house is the only solution. In fact, I could make the argument if you put all your money in your house and then work part time and maybe invest more in your health and stuff, like that could be that could be more stressful, because if something happens, now you have maybe less money. If like something happens to you or someone happens to your husband, now you have this money tied up in a home that bank may not want to give you. So again, Joel, this is like a super long question, but I'm going to share this, and this is again not investment advice, and I would love nothing more for this person to come on the show and we could talk about it. But what I would look to do is I would look to put 20% or less down on the home that they're going to move into, put the rest of the money in a high yield savings account. From that savings account, have that pay the bank, invest in their health and business, and then maybe a year or two from then, the business fizzles out, they get more clarity on what they want to do. That money could then go towards the house or could go to another thing. But again, I would make sure that like if you're not healthy, you're not wealthy. And it's as cliche as that sounds, it's cliche for a reason. And that's what I personally would do if I was in their situation. And I don't know if you have any follow-up questions. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces there, but I think there's scenarios out that weren't even part of the initial question. And I just would remove the Airbnb thing right now. I agree with her husband. I think there's just too many moving pieces, and that could be part of the anxiety. I'm okay paying a little bit of extra interest in the long run. And for having the ability to be more healthy, pursue my business, work part-time. And I'm just viewing it, instead of having a small payment, I'm okay with having a little bit bigger payment, knowing that I have $140,000 in an account that's kind of funding that. And it gives you options. And Joel, like I love options, and I will pay a premium for optionality.
Right. Yeah. When I was hearing this, she was describing this, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it was almost like it's only these two options.
Right.
Like the Airbnb is the answer to giving us what we want. And when I'm hearing that, I'm like, especially with BetterWealth, we're all about intentional living, and health is a major part of that. And we believe it should be like a super high priority for anybody that we come in contact with. And so what I would say is the Airbnb could become a stressor on its own.
Correct.
I think a lot of people believe it's this super passive thing, and there are ways to create that, but there's so many things that can go wrong with a house on its own. I mean, a house is a major responsibility. Just because it's an Airbnb doesn't mean that you're void of those responsibilities. So the way I see that is that I think she was thinking it would allow her to kind of enter this retirement type of stage of life to work on her health and stuff. And I would just say I would avoid that risk.
Yeah.
And
the fact that you have a business that you could be doing more in, I would be asking you a lot of questions about that, and what activities, and do you need more money, or is it just more time? Like I would get really clear on that, because I think there's so much cool opportunity out there. And the fact of the matter is an outstanding loan really going to be an issue if you're expecting to have a inheritance? Like notice how the inheritance wasn't even really on my radar, but the fact that you are going to get something in the future makes it even more of like, why would you tie up valuable resources and tools in the short term?
Yeah, we would love to get you on the show if you're watching this. And so I'll be sure to send this video so you see
and
it.
Again, the call to action is, if you're watching, if you have people that have questions, like for the last six plus years, I wasn't doing this. And I just feel really called to be talking to people, answering questions. You can see that we're keeping this anonymous unless people want to raise their hand and say, hey, I'll come on the show. Whether you want me to look at your entire financial picture, we call that naked numbers, or if you just have an individual question, come on, and we're excited to have you. So, all right, let's go to the next question.
All right. So this is from 27-year-old Victor, and he said he's fine with not being anonymous. And this was a little bit of a funny thing because I said, if you want to share anything about your name, age, gender, or whatever it is, and he said, you can tell by my name that I'm a boy, and there's only two genders. So he wanted us to be sure to let the people know
Victor,
that.
I appreciate your foreignness. So thank you.
So he says, hi, I'm from Europe, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I would like to open up some kind of trust for my family to set up a life insurance, but I can't seem to find a good source in Europe to make that happen. Do you have any
Yeah, so I have a couple questions. And again, it's like, do you live in Europe? Is your family in Europe? Are you a U.S. citizen that's traveling to Europe? But if you truly live in Europe and your family's in Europe and you have questions about life insurance and trust and taxes, I know this makes me feel horrible to have to say this, but I don't really have a direct answer for you. And I would just encourage you to find somebody that can help you, that is familiar with the European tax laws and life insurance. I know that it's possible. Like, we have clients actually overseas, but there's some ties to the U.S. I know that there's life insurance overseas. I don't think it works the same way that life insurance in America or even Canada works. And I don't have a clue about trust as it relates to international, and wouldn't want to even give, even though this is not tax advice, investment advice, don't have anything tangible other than maybe ask around and get some people that can help you that are local.
So it sounds like you have to have some kind of tie to the United States.
If you're
as a citizen, is that
wealthy, meaning you have a lot of money and you have some type of tie, business or something in the United States, life insurance companies will make exceptions. And when I say make exceptions, like, they'll work with you. And we've have some really creative scenarios where people don't reside in the United States or whatnot, and we're able to serve them. But we usually have to work with some of those guidelines, and we're doing an American life insurance company. And so there's other benefits to that, because these people get the benefit of American life insurance. So there's benefits, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And so if you have follow-up questions, you can always reach out to our company. I'm sure there's a way to reach out. You can set up a clarity call, and we want to be as helpful and as possible and connect you with people on our team or in our network that can help you.
Yeah, Victor, I would just say if any of those things that Caleb listed sound like your situation or sound similar to your situation, you can go to info@betterwealth.com, email us there, and one of our team members that works specifically with life insurance is going to be able to help you better with that situation. Next question is another life insurance related question. I'm going to get into some nitty gritty stuff here. When a person borrows from their whole life policy, they incur a loan charge. If the policy is designed to produce income for 20 years with no out-of-pocket expenses, how is the interest covered by the loan, and what kinds of stops are there so the loan interest does not overwhelm the policy?
It's a good question. And my initial pushback would be, if you follow our channel, if you follow what we talk about when it comes to life insurance, I'm not a big fan of selling life insurance from a loan income, just like an income in general. I think it's going to not match what you think it's going to match. And early on in my career, I learned from lots of amazing people, and I was like, man, life insurance is so incredible because it's tax exempt cash flow, so it doesn't affect Social Security, and it's like there's like lots of cool things. And then you look at the nature of like you're continuing to grow with dividends, and it's like it looks really good. And I just realized, like, I am on a piece of paper saying like what could happen 20, 30, 40 years from now. And to be honest, there could be lots of changes for good or for not so good. And so I think it's like one of the things that I've shifted from looking at life insurance more as like an amazing asset for retirees because it gives you so many options, including taking a loan from the policy. And or there's but I'm not a big fan of having that be like the end all be all solution. So with that being the context, the answer would be the loan would just assume the interest rate. So it would just assume the interest. So if you were taking $100,000 cash flow that you needed, you technically would be taking a loan of $100,000 plus interest, and that would be compounded on to your outstanding loan balance. And that each year, if you take out money, that outstanding loan balance is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and your cash value will continue to grow. And the thing that you need to be careful of is, just like this person asked, is if you do it too aggressively, you'll get to a place where you won't be able to take out any more loans, or the loans in general will need to be, covered, or at least the interest will be covered, or your policy could lapse, or be at risk of lapsing. Now, every company's a little different. There are companies that we use that have an over loan protection, which essentially means that you're not going to lapse your policy if you take loans. The company's going to be like, hey, you hit your loan maximum, and we're just like, you're at a place where you can't take out any more money, but your policy is just going to maintain and it's not going to lapse. And those are companies that we like. That concept is good, because if people do take aggressive loans at the end of their life, like, it's nice to know that there's some type of protection there. And there's other benefits, or there's other options that you could do, like reduce pay up a policy, or maybe work with the insurance company to transfer it into a smaller policy. But the most important thing is working with a financial professional who can take a look at your scenario and really be able to model out. And I'm just not a big fan of playing it close. Like, I'm a fan of creating buffer. And I, again, do not think that life insurance in general, whether you're talking about index universal life or whole life, should be looked at as a retirement asset and maxing income. Because I think on paper it might look good, but it just, in reality, it does not work the way that people think it does. And then there could be a lot of levers, especially if we're talking about index universal life, that could change that number drastically. And so I think it's important to know that this is an option. I would not be a fan of people using it solely for retirement income.
This next question is from Tony. Thank you, Tony, for submitting your question. This is a little bit longer as well. Our family is looking to the future, and we would like to learn about the financial tools available to contribute money for our child's future. The child is currently 1 to 5 years old. They don't specify if the child is their immediate family, but the thought being is that they create an account for their future years and their future family and their future retirement. They want something that is tax-free, is able to accept annual contributions for a defined number of years or forever, and a financial tool which allows us to control the money to remain away from the child until the child is deemed old enough to responsibly manage and utilize the money. What financial tools are available?
I feel like this is a colleague who's like putting a ball on a tee for me to knock this out of the park as it relates to the and asset and life insurance. But I'll do my best to answer this. And this is, again, Tony, if you want to come on and we talk about this, it would be a blast to just chat about this scenario. What you're talking about, and again, this is not insurance advice, investment advice, tax advice, but what you're naming would be a perfect example of when life insurance is set up and used properly. It becomes an amazing asset that allows you to do a couple things. Allows you to fund. It allows you to continue to fund if you want to, or stop funding if you don't want to fund ongoing for the rest of this child's life, or if this child doesn't want to fund after they get the policy. It allows you to put after-tax dollars into an account that will grow tax deferred, can be used, whether it's for education, whether it's for business, whether it's for the first car, tax free. And then, it gets passed on income tax free to the next generation. So we think about this as like the college plan that keeps on giving, keeps on compounding. And you can be the owner of the contract. You can fund this. Your kid or grandchild or whoever we're talking about can be the insured, which means you have control until you want to sign over control, until you want to sign and make them the owner, which would mean they're now responsible for, paying the premiums, but they also have the, opportunity to, take loans against their policy, and they're the owner of the policy. But you could very much be the owner, and they could be in their 20s, 30s, and they could just go to you and be like, hey, grandpa or dad or whatnot, I want to use my policy for X, Y, and Z. And at the end of the day, you can, like, it's a private contract. Whoever's the owner gets to really be able to determine what that is. I'm a big fan of life insurance when it's set up and used properly, especially if it's max funded, because it just gives you the ability to store your money where it's better. It'll get a better rate of return than like a savings account or a checking account. It obviously creates protection for your kid, and it's going to continue to grow as they continue to develop. And it just gives them liquidity and options to invest. And I say invest loosely because who knows what the kid wants to do, but it gives them the options to say yes to something and really say yes, but it will continue to like, you set up a life insurance policy on a 5-year-old till the day that kid dies, that policy will continue to grow as long as it's in force. But from day one, it gives you flexibility to use. So imagine, like, in high school or college, this kid can start using their policy, but they're going to get 80 years of compounding, and you don't have to choose anymore between one or the other. So there's no other accounts that come anywhere close to what I think a properly structured whole life insurance policy would give you. 529 plans are, government sponsored. They give you the tax benefits, but you have to use it for education, and you kill compound when you take that out. And most people put their money in the market through a 529 plan, depending on your views. That could be a positive thing. That could be a negative thing. You could put a Roth IRA as soon as the child has income, qualifies. There's a lot of things to be said. You could pay your kid, get a tax deduction, and have your kid be able to fund the policy themselves. So there's cool things that you could do with, like, paying your kids and then having a life insurance policy. And technically you could do the same thing with a Roth IRA. And technically a Roth could compound for the rest of your life, but you have to withdraw that money if you use it. And there's really no other accounts that come close. I mean, there's other investments that you could use, but a life insurance policy, when it's set up and used properly, is the biggest no-brainer for someone like this. And we have people that have insured their 10-day-old. So we have clients that have insured their kids a couple days after coming out of the womb. And it's pretty exciting.
As you said, it almost feels like this was a colleague or something, but I can attest, I don't at least know any colleagues named Tony, so I'm not sure, Tony, if you're familiar with our content, but this was a silver platter for Caleb.
And again, if you want to come on and we talk about it, I am all in favor of that. I want to remind everybody who's watching, you can go to betterwealth.com/naked numbers. The purpose of these segments is to either answer your question or to invite you on and look at your whole financial picture. But you might have a question that you want to come on the show. I'm welcoming everyone, the haters, anyone that wants to debate. Like, I'm welcoming you on. And I'm also welcoming people that want to go on to our Naked Numbers show. I think both shows are going to be a great. It's going to be a lot of fun.
What I will say is something that I don't think at least you mentioned, but something that we've covered is like the Rockefeller method or the waterfall method. Do you think in this situation, setting up in a trust would be ideal, especially when he was talking about it being passed on to the kid at the proper time? Because I know you can, like you mentioned, You can decide when it goes over, but that would require them to be alive. So
correct.
That, to me, would mean they would have to set up some kind of trust where they would specify specifically when it would go to the kid and how much and what can be used for, all that kind of stuff.
For a YouTube video editor, you're very wise on these matters, and that's just the testament, because you edit all of the videos and you see. It's like, I love when you sometimes you comment on behalf of ours. I'm like, dang, like Joel is like, he knows this stuff really, really well. Here's what I'd say is, yes, everything that Joel said is accurate. A trust can give you the ability, whether you're alive or not, to dictate certain things. The pros of a trust is what we just stated. The con is it costs money, and sometimes you're creating more complexities early on. So what I would say is, early on, don't let the trust be the thing that creates friction. Get these things in place. And then if you want to change the beneficiary over to a trust, or even change the owner to a trust, when you have it set up properly and you have proper counsel on it, I think it's great. But I don't think, there's some people that I know that like want to overcomplicate things way too soon. And I'm not a fan of complexity when it comes to anything in your life. And I just think the more simple you can build your business, the more simple you can build your financial life, the better across the board.
Absolutely. All right. This next question is from Alan, who's a 57-year-old male. And he says, do you have a step-by-step manual for creating the wealth management framework? If so, what are the requirements to execute the steps? Can you do any of it yourself, or does it all require expensive professionals?
Yeah.
What's an estimate for the expenses, upfront, fixed, and reoccurring, of establishing and maintaining that system?
That is a great question.
So, got a 5-parter here.
Okay. Yeah. No. Is there any more to that?
Just I was saying, like, because there's like 4 questions inside of that. So if you need,
I'll just, this is what I'll say is, if Alan is willing to come on the show, it will make for an amazing, I think, segment of this show. And so let's make sure to reach out and invite him. But here's what I'll say. Number one, you can do this yourself. I think if you are someone that's like really keen on all this stuff, you can represent yourself just like you can represent yourself in the law. Like, you don't need a lawyer, right? There are many people that are busy. There are many people that are focusing on what they're doing, and it's either a super way efficient to hire somebody to help them, or they're like, I personally will get better results if I hire somebody. So it has nothing to do with like, can you do this yourself? Yes. Are there people that build their own financial empires and manage it themselves, just like people like build, like are the project manager on their home as they're building it? Yes. So I think the answer is, you can do this, and I will share with you the steps and the framework on how to do it. And then what I'll say is, that is exactly why we exist, for people that are like, okay, I don't want to think about this. Can I work with you guys? And the answer is yes. And I can tell you kind of the range of what people have paid us to do this and help them as it relates to their system. So starting with the framework, and the framework is really seven steps. So we're going to go through this quick, and hopefully we'll have more in-depth episode where we get through this. So the first step is clarity. And this is where a coach is worth its weight in gold, because sometimes we are in our own little island, and we need to be asked what we really, really want, why we want it, and we need to be able to audit our time, our relationships, our resources, our skill sets, and ask the question, is what I want is what my God-given inputs are and where I'm currently at? Like, where's the disconnect? So we need clarity on where we want to go, but we also need clarity on our financial situation, and like the gaps of where we are and where we want to go. And like that alone is, people spend thousands and thousands of dollars a year just on like performance coaches. And it's really important to have clarity. And so that would be step number one, is ask the certain questions on getting clear on where you are. The second step is all about cash flow. It's my belief, it's my conviction that cash flow is the most important financial metric that we use to measure. And one of your greatest things that you should look at is increasing your cash flow, and really, really looking at your cash flow and figuring out what's your return on time, what's your return on assets, and what's your total just get clear on the total cash flow coming into your household or business economy year in and year out. And just get clear, because if we don't have cash flow, we can't run the system. So get clear about your cash flow. And then the third step, Joel, is your cash flow ratio. So your cash flow ratio is a function of two things. It's a function of your money that you're consumed and your money that you're saving. And money's only capable of doing two things. This is another powerful thing that we can dive into. But when you have money, it's only capable of doing two things. It can be consumed or it can be saved for a future consumption date. So when we look at consumption is either spending, fixed or variable expenses. It could be taxes, which is a variable expense. It could be debt, which could be fixed or variable. It could be, spending money on a latte. Well, I'm actually, when it comes to consumption, we need to be unemotional. We just need to know that anytime you're spending $1, it's lost forever. And so if we know how much money someone consumes, we can say with confidence that that is their lifestyle. So the fourth step I would look at is, once I know how much money you consume and save, I'm looking first at your consumption and saying, all the money that you're consuming, is there inefficiencies? Are there ways to be more optimal in where you're at? And are we spending money on things that we don't value? Or are we overspending on the things that we don't need if we truly get clear, but going back to clarity and what we want? Are you overpaying on taxes? Because 9 out of 10 businesses are overpaying on taxes. Hence why we have a tax company. And for any of you that want a tax analysis, you can, we'll see a link below or reach out to us. We can connect you with our team at Deriba that does tax analysis. And most people are overpaying on taxes. Most people are spending their money on things that they don't need to. They're just overspending on things that don't align with their values. And, most people don't have their debt and credit optimized to the level of it's working super well for their consumption area. So after we talk about consumption, then I'm looking at savings. And all I'm talking about when I think of savings is savings is a verb to hopefully invest. Investing is that verb of multiplying your money. And so when I'm looking at savings, number one, I want to look at your assets already. Asset is anything that creates cash flow and is of value. And I just want to audit your assets and say, of the money that you've currently saved and invest, how are those assets performing? What are the rates of return? What cash flows is it creating? Are these assets aligned with where you're at? And are these assets the best for your chessboard to accomplish the life that you want to accomplish? Some people have great quote unquote investments, Joel, but it's not in alignment with their personal where they want to go. So I would look at their assets and I would ask them questions and just analyze it. And then I would establish, does this person have an emergency fund? Let's make sure that gets knocked out, because I'm a firm believer that part of the foundation is building that emergency fund. And then everything up above the emergency fund, I think of as an opportunity. And on that balance sheet, anything up above the emergency fund is an opportunity. And we're now looking at where this person should be investing their resources. And this is again, we don't give investment advice based on these stocks and kind of deal, but we're using this thing called investor DNA that's getting really clear about where you're at, the decisions that you make, and what you want, what's your why, what's your sole purpose, and then what should you be investing your time and money in as a result of that. And I can't take any credit for the investor DNA. I've had so many people come before me that have articulated that better. And we're then measuring those assets based on your intentional life, but then also we're measuring it based on cash flow. And then one of the last things, number 6, is risk management. We're looking at everything from, your current, is there something that could affect your future cash flow, your current assets, your current liabilities? We want to be able to protect those basic things. So we'll look at your estate plan. We'll look at your, is there something that could happen to you that could remove your current or future cash flow? Is there something that could happen health insurance wise that could wipe your whole financial situation out? And we want to make sure that your risk management is in place. And then from a legacy standpoint, this is number 7. It's just thinking with the end in mind and really being are we thinking multiple generations? And so to answer your question is, we have a wealth efficiency packet that we can have a link down below that gives a lot of tools, and anyone can get that for free. And what I'll say is there's some people that can totally be their own project manager on their life and take some of the tools that we have, this video, and be able to walk them through. There's a lot of people though that would benefit conversations with our team. And the way that we work with people is, I mean, it's anywhere from a free call to, $10,000, plus, and a monthly retainer to have a personal CFO, a coach, be able to speak into your life, your business, track your money. And so, if you have a conversation, and if it's a good fit, we can give you more details. But it's like we have a lot of opportunities in how we can help somebody. But the most important thing is what's the most important thing for them. And so I talked a lot, but that's kind of like the way that I would answer an in-depth question like that.
So like Caleb said, we'll have all the links that he's listed. There's been a lot of material that we've covered. So all of that stuff will be in the description. You'll be able to access all of that, all those free resources. And so be sure to go check that out. Also, make sure to go to betterwealth.com/naked numbers, submit your questions. We would love to get you on the show to speak to Caleb directly about this, because a lot of this he's trying to fill in the gaps a little bit, and it would mean the world. And he's going to be able to speak into you a lot more if you actually come on the show. So be sure to do that.
Yeah, betterwealth.com/naked numbers. Joel, is there any final thoughts that you have as we did the first BetterWealth Q&A show? I thought this was a great first start, and I'm sure there's lots more questions and lot more dialogue to come.
Yeah, I had fun. I'm gonna have to get used to being on camera a little bit more than I have been, instead of being in the background. I'm like making sure I don't look awkward. But no, this was a blast. Keep the questions coming. This is going to be one of the most authentic financial shows you'll get on YouTube, and I promise that Caleb is here to steer you in the right direction. So this is the place to drop your financial questions at.
Amazing. All right, guys. Thank you so much for subscribing, sharing, and being a part of our family.